Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the TFT Perspective. Viewers, Israel's warmongering, its bloodshed seems to be unstoppable. What we had witnessed in the past week are events of, catastrophical biblical levels, in fact. And only thing that is predictable in the future is all full-scale regional war, which can also be termed as World War III, in fact. What we had witnessed just last week alone not only was attacks by Israel inside Lebanon, which resulted in the death of Mr. Hassan Nasrallah, but also the targeting of the port of Hodeidah inside Yemen, as well as continuous border incursions inside Lebanon by Israel, which is considered as one of their key operations in order to create a buffer zone inside Lebanon so that their citizens might return to their northern regions and live peacefully there. So far, what we have witnessed is that Israel seems to go up the ante when it comes to escalation. The word de-escalation has been completely eliminated in the Middle Eastern dictionary so far as I'm concerned. And on Tuesday alone, after so many different setbacks, Iran finally responded against Israel by launching around 400 ballistic missiles as well as some hypersonic missiles targeting their military infrastructure inside Israel and occupied territories as well. So far, according to US sources, according to Israeli sources, the damage was basically on ground very less as compared to what Iran is claiming. But according to multiple video footages of Israeli citizens themselves show a picture which is very gruesome for a lot of people. So far, what the Benjamin Netanyahu and his crony cabinet is suggesting is that we need to go even further up the ante and we can strike everything inside the Middle East. Nobody knows what they are trying to suggest is, but it seems that the conflict is going to go further than Lebanon, maybe into Syria, maybe into Iraq, maybe even in other Middle Eastern countries. Who knows? Because as per Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, all is up for grabs. So we are going to talk today about a certain topic that if a regional war does shape up inside the Middle East, what is it going to look as? And number one, because what we have witnessed so far is that during the first Gulf War, Iraq was completely surrounded. All the Gulf countries, including Iran, were very anti-Saddam Hussein at that time, and Iraq didn't had as much options as it had. Iran today has a lot of allies. In fact, a lot of global powers do support Iran, so it's going to be very difficult for Israel to get to Iran. We have also another event heard just yesterday in which according to multiple Israeli news channels as well as Israeli newspapers, suggest that around 9 Israeli troops died at the Lebanese-Israel border during a border skirmish. They tried to incur inside Lebanon, but Hezbollah was waiting in ambush. According to Hezbollah, they also said that around 4 Markawa tanks were also destroyed. We have with us Mr. Wakar Ke Kodui. Sir, Iran has, so far as it is concerned, even in the UN Security Council session, the Iranian delegation said that it's time for de-escalation, but this response was required from Iran. Now, when America is also suggesting the time and placing Israel is going to choose and we are going to respond to it, and Israel is claiming that we can target anywhere inside the Middle East. And what do you think a response from Israel would be? So far, what we have seen is pager bombs, assassinations of Mr. Islam Hania inside Tehran, then Hassan Nasrallah inside Beirut. What else they can come up with?
Yeah, I think the Middle Eastern, cobweb is very complicated. Mm-hmm. And we've been discussing it earlier also that it's not very simple to actually define the responses. Actually, it is happening, the contest is happening in 3 layers. Mm-hmm. At times people forget that probably it's between Israel and Hamas and Israel and Hezbollah, and maybe there are certain phases. But if you look at the forces which are arrayed, mm-hmm. Inside the Middle East and around, if you look at that's area from Mediterranean to Pakistan and Indian Ocean, and to north you extend Iranian northern borders into Caucasus and Russian Federation. So this is I would say, overall theater. Now, if you look on the Western side or the Israeli side, definitely Israel is one. The IDF is fighting their war, and Mossad. And then, of course, comes the US military presence. I think now they have probably 2 or 3 aircraft carrier groups in the region, Red Sea and Indian Ocean, North Arabian Sea, closer to Strait of Hormuz. US always has different, I think, task forces in Eastern Mediterranean, in the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea. That is standard operating procedure, and they keep then of course shuffling. Then comes the Western allies, which includes the British, French, Australian. There's an Australian task force also. I think that has also moved up the Indian Ocean. And then of course NATO's itself, presence. They also have a basing in basically Cyprus, from where UK forces are normally, and last time also when the Delta forces were heard to come to Gaza, they came from Cyprus. So this is one side. On the other side, you have 3 layers. It's the axis of resistance with Hamas, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, and Houthis in Yemen. And then second layer you have Islamic Republic of Iran. And third layer is actually Russian Federation, which time people forget that Russia has physical interests. In Syria, they have 2 bases. One is Tartus naval base, where you have a huge Russian fleet present there. And then is the Khamimaim air base, which is again very close. So they are on the Mediterranean. This is the only entry Russians have in the warm waters, other than the Black Sea, because in case you're going to transit from Black Sea, again you have to pass through Bosphorus, basically a NATO ally. Although I think Russia has the right of passage. But in terms of, I think, passage of warships, there could be certain restriction in wartime. So it means that physically, or then Russians have to skirt, the Arctic, come from the North Sea and then take a huge circuit, or maybe through Pacific. But Tartus naval base is very, very important. And if you look at Russian interest, who guards the Tartus base is the Syrian government and Russian forces themselves. Last time Bashar had a problem, the Russians physically came in. They established something like the dome, their defense system, and then sanitized it from ISIS. So there you have Syria, and then of course Iranian and Russian interests converge because they were not like. Now any pushback to Iran would mean Syria being compromised and mean Russian bases being compromised. I don't think so Mr. Putin is going to allow President Putin. We have also seen, I think, some videos in which President Putin in the recent past had indicated that in case our, let's say, enemies or opposition in Ukraine are thinking of equipping them with long-range weapons, like there's a talk of, we discussed, Storm Shadow missiles, and NATO wants now to extend the, reach up to Moscow and St. Petersburg, which is, I think, very, very absurd. Don't push a nuclear power like that. And I think Mr. Putin did indicate, President Putin, that in case you can do it, then we can do it in some other areas where your interests, your sensitive interests are there. Russian military strategists already call this area as their Western Front. If you look at the Eastern Front, Ukraine, and the Western Front is basically Middle East, especially Israel and Mediterranean. So there was the firing of hypersonic missile by the Houthis, who provided that technology, experts. Was it the Wagner group or they were trained? I think that was a test case before the Iranian strike, because now there are reports that whether it is Fatah or the hypersonic missile provided, but we don't know. But I think Houthis missile firing was a test to see the effectiveness of dome, and that single missile had penetrated the system. And it traveled, I think, if you look at the speed was, again, 2,000 kilometers in most probably 12 to 15 minutes. So that's the kind of speed this has. Same was the distance when it was fired from Iran. But this was a salvo. So this is how you look at the overall context. So you can't say that Israel has a lot of leverages. And there are a lot of, if you look at the Asbara concept of Zionist, or I would say now the current Israeli government, this is based on this very old technique of disinformation. So it's a huge info ops going. You look at pages followed by Hassan Nasrullah's assassination and shahadat, And then Israel looked, in the region as probably they've regained the initiative and they're going to roll on, they're going to smash everything. And that was, I think, to literally express the minds of all the opposition and to communicate it to the Arab world also that, they are the, I would say, goons and the hegemons of this area and nothing can stop them. And you saw how Western media behaved. You saw how Indian media behaved. And even when we were discussing on Pakistani media, there are a lot of questions that, let's say there's nobody to stop this, I would say roller coaster drive by the Israelis. And now we have seen the response. And somehow, whether it be the Indians, we've seen them on the line of actual control, what happened when China gave them a thrashing or Pakistan a swift retort. If you lie low, and same is true, I think, with the Zionists, they will just, as I think Churchill said about some other other nation, that they are either, on your feet or on your throat. So it's something like that. If you don't respond, and that's why our initial calculation, I think in last video, was that Iran is bound to respond because there's too much of pressure. One from the, I would say, excess of resistance itself because they've lost top leadership. Ismail Haniyeh, followed by Hassan Nasrullah, and there are a lot of top commanders. If you look at one of the, I think, hierarchy graphs given by the Israelis floating on social media, and they were basically crossing. And after crossing Hezbollah, it appears that probably entire top leadership of Hezbollah has been taken out. So it was bound. I don't know how, Mossad or for that matter CIA were calculating. Probably Iranians are going to lie low. And if you look at Iranian political leadership response later on, we have seen. So I think this is the overall scenario. What could, at present, how it could unfold, I think we can discuss that. Possible scenarios, sense prevailing or otherwise.
So, as far as the global order is concerned, and so many diplomatic efforts being done from different Middle Eastern countries, including Israel's allies as well, including US, we have heard Mr. Biden repeatedly suggesting that there needs to be a 21 days, pause so that we can come on the table and discuss the issue at hand. Now we have seen a great window of opportunity by different Middle Eastern countries who have suggested that a two-state solution is the last option and this Israel needs to go for it. Otherwise, maybe this war does spread inside different regions of the Middle East, because almost 60% to 70% of the stockpile of hydrocarbon of the global supply chain comes from this area. And if it is disturbed, we have just witnessed airlines being disturbed inside Syria, inside Jordan, inside Iran, inside Lebanon. So at the end of the day, there is, when it comes to a storm being created, maybe there are implications that they are heading for a regional conflict. So if Israel does respond against Iran, and I don't blame that they might do that, what possible scenarios they have, in what way they can respond in this. So far, whatever they have done that for the cause of escalation. In fact, some journalists are claiming this is all being done so that they can employ the US inside this conflict, and together they can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I think we have to look at the decision-making process and the leadership at present. In Israel, we have a total Zionist lobby, whether it is the Prime Minister or the Defense Minister. Even I think I've seen the military behaving like TikTokers, the military chief, the IDF chief. And we've seen how they were trying to project, idea. So this is one. Then if you go to US, they are already into elections. I think
there is also reports, as per some Israeli sources, they suggested that initially Americans, after the Iranian response, they said that let's hold our horses. We can think over it, but don't respond immediately. That's why after quite some time, there were reports. The old Israeli, journalists suggested that if the US is doing this to us, then we can do something to them as well.
No, I think
this is just absurd.
I think this is part of the Hasbara doctrine. As I said, either they are at your throat or at your feet. There is nothing in between. Well, that is my assessment. Maybe I'm wrong. Now, if you look at US decision making at present, one, they are into elections. Biden is almost paralyzed in terms of, he hardly can deliver any speeches. So I would say till January, there's nobody commander-in-chief in the United States. I think very, very, I would say, and at this crucial time, Even let's say if the war breaks out and they declare that Biden is going to continue for 6 months, still he is going to remain paralyzed. As far as and probably the US establishment, or the neocons, or the people who drive military industrial complex are going. Again, we're seeing hawks coming up. Even if Trump wins, so we're looking at January
His election
20th.
campaign does suggest that he's going to support a lot for Israel.
Right, yeah.
So it's going to divert attention from Ukraine and maybe just completely go
So
to
let's
the
see.
Middle East.
So that's where I think the paralysis. At the time people don't realize what is happening, because there has to be a political face who comes up. Kamala Harris is dumb, and even if she comes, I don't know what changes she can bring up. So it means that probably Israelis had already calculated that for next, let's say even if you look at now Hassan Nasrallah's assassination on 27th. So it means October, November, December, and almost good part of January. So 4 months, they thought. And then you have Iranian leadership. If you look at the address by Netanyahu, what was he trying to target? To incite violence, a revolution in Iran.
Yes.
And I think he paid for it. I think this dumb move that probably, if you, I think, can bring revolutions through addressed by an enemy, I think this is going to be a new precedent. But this is the kind of thinking they had. That probably, after that, people will get up and revolt against the Islamic regime. On the Islamic regime side, I think now they have regained the prestige that Iran had lost, and now I would say they have an upper hand. Then comes the third player, as I mentioned. Yes, you look at the groups. Houthis are intact in terms of leadership, but Hamas and Hezbollah had serious problems. So I would say that their leading cadres are gone. So you have somewhere, second tier leadership which is now in. But maybe it is more younger and more aggressive. We have seen how Hezbollah is done with them. And we have the maps. I think if you look at where there were incursions, there are 2 villages where Israel had put special forces and they were, I think, badly mauled, including 3 Markava tanks, maybe more than that. There are different reports from 9 to 50 casualties. So it means that Hezbollah is going to, and this is the first, impression what Hezbollah is given, that ground offense is going to be very, very deadly and bloody. Now
it was difficult even in 2006.
Yes. Then you come to leadership in Middle East. Good thing, I think, which came up was in UNGA. We have seen that video in which you had the top OIC and Arab ambassadors. Especially, I think they lined up those who are directly affected, including Saudi foreign minister. Then you had the Turkish foreign minister, the Egyptian foreign minister, Jordanian foreign minister. I think there was one more, I'm forgetting. And they very clearly, and I think today we had Financial Times article by Saudi foreign minister published that there is no other solution than the two-state solution. And we are ready to guarantee. This was very unequivocally. So it means that in Middle East leadership, whether it is the Arab League or the OIC, there is a feeling that maybe Israel can do whatever they want, but now we should put our foot down that it has to be a two-state solution. And I think it's a good approach.
Yes.
Unless Netanyahu feels that they have to convert Gaza into a car park or southern Lebanon into, a battleground. And they feel that they can
do with just about anyone.
And Jordanian foreign minister, I think, very smartly said that you put 30 years of effort. If you look at the effort right up to Abraham Accord and, right from Oslo Accord in, I think, 1993, again it was signed in September, that you put everything, in the doldrums. We are for peace, but you guys, there's nobody that we can talk. Everybody's talking of war. So there'll be a lot of pressure. And I think this time, last time, if you remember, there were reports that when the Iranians struck, they were, defensed by some of the Middle Eastern allies also. Maybe including Jordan, I don't know. But this time, I think they passed without any resistance. So only American Air Force, US Air Force, which was defending.
This is where my third question also comes into play.
I'll just come to that now. I'll just touch the most important player is President Putin in terms of leadership and the Russian establishment at present. Because that is again very, very critical how he sees it. We mentioned that there is a threat to Russia in terms of long-range weapon systems. He's already come up with the nuclear doctrine. That, okay, you do it, but you will get a response because you can't push Russia, beyond certain deadline. And he did mention that there could be a response. Now, whether these some of the missiles were provided by Russian Federation, we don't know, because the markings as shown don't have any Persian written on that. So some people are speculating maybe. So it means that one, they have conveyed it that dome or whatever, or what they call the Goliath's, sling, David sling or whatever, arrow system. They
I
will
think they were completely overwhelmed by the amount
overwhelmed
of salvo being
salvo, and
fired.
then I think it was very intelligently orchestrated and choreographed. And now we've seen even Hezbollah taking them. So I think the very strong message from Mr. Putin, President Putin, is that in case you do it, so this is where we are going to respond. The Western Front will become hot. So I think this is what is as far as leadership is concerned. And then definitely we can discuss about the scenarios that in case, still Netanyahu and his general feel
even
that
if there is a scenario of a regional war, I don't think that there is a land connection between Israel and Iran. I think the war is going to be contained inside buffer regions of Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. And even if so, they just remain quiet and they do announce and declare war against each other. If air forces, air defense are deployed inside this region, don't you think it's going to be very alarming for the Middle East as well? Just jets constantly flying through their airspaces and their aviation, civil aviation, not being allowed to move from one place to another. This is just one small example, and almost the entire civilian aviation fleet was completely on ground and nobody flew. So if the situation develops on a daily basis, so don't you think it's less feasible now that Israel is going to do that, or even the Middle Eastern countries do allow it to happen?
Yeah, I think I would like our Western, opinion makers and hawks, especially in Israel also, to just compare the Ukrainian theater with this Middle East theater. And I would also ask them to think over it that I think stereotyping doesn't really give you the answers in war. Now, if you look at Ukrainian theater, it's very small if you compare it with Middle East. Although on one side we have Russia, but it's restricted to Ukrainian and Russian airspace and physical space, maybe part of Red Sea. But here, if you look at Iran, let's say entire Iran gets into a war. So we look at the entire Iranian geography, including Caspian Sea. Down you have Strait of Hormuz, Red Sea, Indian Ocean, and Mediterranean. So this becomes a huge theater. And then are there allies in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon, and look at Yemen. So all told, this is almost, I would say, it's more than Europe, in terms of size. And if you look at dilution of forces, because those who are going to fight, like Israel and Iran, may be physically present, they can concentrate their forces. I don't think Israel has too much of stamina to really go and, let's say, assault the Iranian, let's say, coastline. In case the US hawks are ready to jump,
is it that's why Benjamin Netanyahu is relying more on a regime change rather than direct confrontation?
Yes, and I think again still it's an absurd idea, but whatever. The idea is that they should not be forced to do that. So if you look at this theater and what flows from here, other than, let's say,
hydrocarbon.
You have hydrocarbon.
Yeah.
Only these two states, Strait of Hormuz and Red Sea, take about almost 30%, maybe more than that, of daily supply of oil and gas. And in case it is choked, it means oil prices can skyrocket. And then countries like China, who are dependent, India, although they are trying to prod the Israelis, don't know that what can happen to them. India is an energy deficient. Pakistan may be able to use some land routes, at least, and then we are very close that we can sneak some of the oil supplies. But India definitely will be. Then comes the civil aviation. If you look at the routes from Europe to Australia, Far East, everything passes from here. You can't fly over Africa and the Indian Ocean because you have to hug the other main route was basically European route, which connected let's say Eastern Europe with Russia, Ukraine, and then going up to Japan.
They
maybe
destroyed it themselves.
That is already I think blocked.
Under stress.
So practically you are going to stop the civil aviation to fly. The commercial airlines, and it's a huge business. Look at Dubai, look at Abu Dhabi, you have Jeddah, then you have Iran itself, Karachi, Mumbai, Istanbul, Ankara, Cairo, all this region, and then you connect it with Frankfurt and Paris and whatever. Even North America will be affected. So is the world going to allow these, I would say, so-called goons to just have their way? I think people are going to jump in and stop it. And maybe somebody has to go and physically give a slap on Netanyahu's face to just, or throw him out. I think the call should now be to Israeli people to throw him out, this regime, and not the Iranian people throwing. So this is, I think, the overall scenario. Now, if you look at some of the military options that people are talking, again, Asbara.
Yeah, we have heard that, Mossad on their official Twitter channel talked about targeting nuclear facilities, oil rigs, civilian infrastructure, and all these areas in order to scuttle the economics of the regime, and then the people themselves are going to revolts. And then we saw the tweet of a prince of the Pahlavi dynasty as well. So they are looking for that option.
Yeah, I think still this is again Asbara or Hindutva. Hindutva flag bearers, if you look at, idiots like you have in India, they are still living in, I think, cuckoo's land. And they were saying that there is so much of penetration of Mossad that, even some of the generals who are in Iranian regime, their ADCs will be revolting against them and kill them all. This is bullshit. So let's say you look at, let's say the Israeli and US Air Forces, decide, okay, we're going to take out. Iranian nuclear sites are underground. They are spread across a lot of
different areas.
Not around Tehran only. Their missile system is supposed to be like these one, that they fired from 4 places. Again, they were in underground, huge tunnels, taken out, fired, and nobody could actually detect before. It was only during flight that these were detected, not for the sites. And if this is the response by Iranians just for assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, you think that attack on Iranian nuclear site?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Why
somebody said there are more than 1 million, I think.
And don't you think Iran would be expecting some kind of a super response like this, and their air defense systems or anything, the S-300s are not going to be deployed in the region, and they're just going to take it all in? Yeah, do it.
And which routes are the Israelis going to fly?
Yeah.
So somebody may ask,
they're going to use
maybe tomorrow,
the airspace of
I think maybe
they
the
don't
Middle
have
Eastern
a
countries,
connection.
as I think they have warned Israel, maybe they then put a check.
Probably that's one of the reasons why they're keeping on to have a diplomatic solution, so that they don't come under this kind of pressure.
Because then Iranians can always say that, okay, if your airspace is being used, then. So I'm sure there is also a conference going on, and I think we just forget that S-400 already arrived in Iran.
Yeah.
So all the important critical areas, because it's an area defense system with a range of almost, I think, 300 kilometer plus. So it will be a very, I think, difficult thing for Israel to manage. It's not like, attack on, let's say, Iraqi nuclear plant when there used to be no defense system like that. And then talk of physical assault, I think this is impossible. You will require about, I think, 1 million. Just imagine how many forces were arrayed to just capture southern Iraq in Desert Storm. The entire world, coalition was built up over 1 year. And we don't see such kind of activity. Neither, I think, the Middle Eastern countries are going to, because they're not like their areas to become battleground just for nothing. And we've seen some of the warheads which were intercepted by Israelis falling in Jordan. There were some reports, I don't know. And some people getting injured. So why would the Arab world want, this missile flying and then falling on them? So I think this is quite a difficult option. But still, if they want, they can try. Then we have to look at what will be the reaction by Turkey, Pakistan, Afghanistan, rest of the Middle East. Is the passage of, these ships going to continue like that, or going to be massive attacks? If you look
we just witnessed how, the Houthis have scuttled trade going from the,
Bab al-Mandab
Strait. So in Hormuz, things would be even tough, since Iran has a massive navy and it's going to be really tough.
I think Western media also needs to come up with the truth. I think there will be an appeal to them that please stop, lying on behalf of Zionists. There was an attack on a British, I think, super tanker. And the report in British press was that an incident has been reported, I think, and it has moved to, some harbor and all that. So please stop, bluffing your people and rest of the world. I would also like to highlight, importance of first 2 weeks of October. One, of course, end September was UNGA session, and timing was selected by Netanyahu to assassinate Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, a martyr, and then they built up. And I think it was to probably link it with Rosh Hashanah, which is now happening. 1st to 3rd or 4th of October, it is one of the, something like Eid. It's a very important day. And then followed by Yom Kippur on 11th October. This year Yom Kippur is on the Day of Atonement. So there was something to be done, celebrated, and congratulations. And we saw Modi Saab also on first, exchanging some very nice words. And I think he must have appreciated Netanyahu for taking out Hassan Nasrallah, but not communicated it. And then came the response next day. So I think Israelis had a bitter taste for this Rosh Hashanah this year. But I think this also creates an opportunity. That in case they want a good Yom Kippur this year, I think they should put the swords into plowshares. Think about it. Think about how much destruction they have already caused. Palestinians need right, and the Middle East, Islamic world, everybody is primed for, I think, two-state solution. Despite some of the guys in Pakistan raising that, this is not a kind of solution. We want entire Palestine. We have to look at the reality. Jews and Muslims, Palestinians have to coexist. I think this is a good option given by Islamic world, especially the four foreign ministers. And I'm sure this is the government policy. We also have a conference, I think, a meeting taking place in Doha today. We have the Iranian president is there. Qatari Amir had received him. And then Saudi foreign minister is there. And I think there are some other important people. Is it being communicated to Iran that there is some message coming from US, or it is a consultation for peace and cooperation? I don't know. But maybe something good comes out of it. Hopefully so. But in case the neocons in US and I was surprised at one of the senators, Lindsey Graham, blow it off. Blow it off. Iran out of the map. And these guys have just, I think, I don't know what do they take, which weed they smoke. And again he repeated, you can't blow out nations. You couldn't blow out, Palestinian from Gaza. It's a very small place.
Last question, as you mentioned about US. What we have witnessed so far is that Israel is trying to get US into this mess. Defensively, they are very cooperative with Israel. We saw Pentagon officials doing a presser that we had done interceptions of this entire ballistic missile attack by Iran. How far do you think the US is going to go if a full-scale war does take place between Iran and Israel, or whether it be limited operations inside Lebanon, Syria, or Iraq?
I think...
keeping in view what is happening right now inside Ukraine, can US actually afford to have another fund being opened for them here?
Before answering that, I'd just like to comment on Matthew Miller. He keeps smiling, the spokesperson for the White House. And yesterday he was quite confused. And he was, I think, getting amused.
I think he was also reading from a teleprompter about what they're going to do.
Because I don't think there's guidance coming from the leadership, what you have to tell. I think US have limited options. But if you look at their own interest in the region, there is a war already active in Eastern Europe, which is again entering a very decisive phase. Most probably Russians have an upper edge there. And in case there are serious reverses, just think over it, that military option, we always talk of quick operations, sting operations and surgical strikes by India. If it has taken 1 year just to tackle Hamas, and so far Hamas, as you
they did attack Israeli forces in Rafah even today, even in Khan
For
Yunis.
God's sake, have a heart. This is the third decade of 21st century. People will be ready to die for their cause. So if you couldn't actually tackle Hamas properly in 1 year, what limited and short operation against Iran, or for that matter Hezbollah, they've tried. Again Hezbollah has been engaged. Okay, you've taken out some of their leadership, but you cannot, maybe these are down, but they are not out. So looking at, Iran, and as we have, painted the region, I think this will definitely result into something very, very big. So it's not going to be mini World War III. It will be a free for all. And then when, people start scoring, settling scores, you don't know what's in Russian mind or Iranians or
even in the Chinese
mind. And what happens to the Arab street? And the Chinese, yes. Why would they keep quiet? And if in America...
Arab street was celebrating these attacks. I don't know about their leadership, but Arab street was celebrating all these attacks.
And just the last quick point of 2.5 front. India also talks of 2.5 front, the small 2.5 front within South Asia. And then NATO also, let's say the Western powers have a 2.5 front strategy. They feel that they can hold 2 bigger wars and 1 regional war. They have the capacity. But I have seen that entire NATO is not engaged in Eastern Europe. It's just Ukraine. They are exhausted. The other major front is Indo-Pacific with China, which is primed. It can break out any time. And this just half front they used to call like Iraq has actually consumed their allies.
Mhm.
So just imagine if the second front really opens in Indo-Pacific. I don't think so. West should have the stamina, and maybe China is also waiting that okay, if you want to do this, I'll sort it out. Entire South China Sea and Taiwan once for all.
So I hope so. Sense does prevail inside Middle East, especially from the Israeli or Iranian perspective, whatever narrative you buy these days. But that's it for today, folks. We're going to see you in the next episode. Please do leave a like and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much for watching us. Bye bye.